Okay, let's set the scene. July 14th, 1789. Paris. Forget the date for a second. Just picture the city. You can almost feel it, right?
Yeah.
This crackling energy, this feeling that something big is about to happen.
Definitely. Years of frustration just simmering below the surface.
And that's what we're diving into today. The storming of the Bastille.
Yeah, and we're lucky because we have these two really distinct viewpoints. We've got Thomas Jefferson, the American minister to France then, a very sharp observer.
Watching it all unfold, yeah.
Exactly. And then completely different, we have the Parisian newspapers. Just, raw energy, immediate reactions right from the ground level.
Right. So Jefferson, maybe a bit more detached, the diplomat's view, and then the newspapers, just pure emotion, what people were feeling and reading the very next day. So our mission here is to really unpack it. Was this whole thing just this explosion of the people's fury? What was the Bastille actually like that day? And what does it tell us about revolution, symbols, that kind of thing?
Big questions.
Yeah. So, okay, let's start before the 14th. What was going on? What was making Paris such a powder keg?
Well, the discontent wasn't new. It had been building for years, really. You had massive social inequality, the whole estates general system, where the clergy and nobility had all the power, all the privileges.
Well, everyone else paid the price.
Yes. And they bore the brunt of taxes, economic problems, plus there were terrible harvests just before 1789 leading to famine. That just threw fuel on the fire.
Right, so you've got this society just stretched to its breaking point. And Jefferson, he gives us this really vivid picture, doesn't he? He talks about people starting to arm themselves.
Yeah, he does. He notes they grabbed pikes, whatever they could find, really, makeshift weapons. And he says they were roaming all night through all parts of the city.
Wow. That sounds like a city just teetering right on the edge.
Absolutely. And that's the backdrop to the confrontation at the Bastille itself. The newspapers say this huge crowd gathered outside.
What were they after initially?
It seems like gunpowder and weapons, mostly. The Bastille was known to have stores of both. So first, they tried to negotiate.
Okay, negotiation first. And there's that newspaper account, right? But the governor, Marquis de Launay, he supposedly raised a white flag.
Exactly. A flag of truce. Suggests maybe, just maybe, it could have ended differently. But, that's not what happened according to the papers.
What did they report?
The same newspaper says that after a delegation went into the outer courtyard, some French guards who'd switched sides, plus armed citizens de Launay, ordered the drawbridge pulled up.
Pulled up after letting them in.
And then ordered his soldiers to fire on them.
Oh, okay, that changes everything. That feels like a massive betrayal, inviting people in under a truce flag and then opening fire.
You can almost feel the shock, the anger, just reading the account. It's like a switch just flipped in the crowd's mood. Negotiation over.
Yeah, that perceived treachery, as you called it, that must have been the spark for the real fighting.
Seems like it. The newspaper calls it a terrible scene. People suddenly trapped in the courtyard under fire.
Terrible scene probably doesn't even cover it. The accounts talk about Parisians showing incredible bravery, scrambling onto roofs nearby, trying to break through the inner walls.
All while facing musket fire, even cannons from the Bastille's defenders. It sounds absolutely desperate, chaotic.
It's just pure chaos.
And what really stands out in those newspaper reports is this sense of, collective effort, everyone pitching in.
How so?
They specifically mention women, to the best of their ability, helped us. And even kids, the children, ran here and there picking up the bullets and shot after the soldiers fired.
Wow, children collecting bullets. That really paints a picture of how widespread this was. It wasn't just a small group of fighters.
No, it sounds like a huge chunk of the Parisian population got involved somehow. And that pressure, plus those crucial French guards who joined the crowd, eventually the Bastille couldn't hold out. It fell.
And Governor de Launay, what happened to him? Both Jefferson and the papers mention his capture, right?
They do. But his end was... whoa! It was brutal. Really highlights the fury of that moment.
Jefferson's account is pretty grim. He says de Launay was trampled him underfoot and struck by 1,000 blows.
Yeah, and the newspaper confirms that violence. It adds this really visceral detail. His head was cut off and stuck on the end of a pike with blood streaming down all sides.
Oh, just horrific. It's hard to even picture. Revolutionary vengeance, I suppose.
You could call it that. And he wasn't the only one. The lieutenant governor met a similar fate. They paraded both heads through the streets.
It really drives home just how raw and maybe primal that anger was.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that revolutions aren't clean.
Definitely not. Okay, but now, here's the twist, right?
Right.
The part that always surprised me. This huge symbolic takedown of tyranny, freeing the oppressed. But who was actually inside the Bastille?
Right. This is where Jefferson's more detached view comes in handy. He recorded the, well, honestly, kind of surprising fact. On July 14th, 1789, the Bastille held only 7 prisoners.
7. Just 7 people in this massive, fearsome fortress. It's anticlimactic almost.
It really is. And they weren't exactly, heroes of the resistance locked up for defying the king.
No, Jefferson lists them, doesn't he? It was, 4 guys in prison for forgery?
Correct, 4 forgers, then 2 men who were considered mentally ill.
Okay, and 1 person locked up for incest.
Yeah?
So, no political prisoners being dramatically liberated.
None at all on that day. Which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If it wasn't about freeing prisoners, why this building? Why the violent assault?
And that brings us straight to the power of symbols, I guess.
Exactly. The Bastille, in people's minds, had become the symbol of royal power gone wrong. This, mysterious, medieval, dark dungeon, as the sources put it. A place where the king could just lock anyone up without reason.
It represented absolute power. Arbitrary imprisonment.
Precisely. So the fact that only 7 fairly ordinary people were inside on that specific Tuesday didn't really matter for the symbolism. It stood for everything the revolution was against.
Like tearing down a statue, maybe. The statue itself is just material. But what it represents, that's the power.
That's a great analogy. The Bastille represented royal absolutism, so storming it, taking it apart stone by stone later, that was a huge symbolic victory. It was about dismantling the idea of that unchecked power.
And the newspaper accounts, they give us a window into the crowd's mindset too, right? You see that initial confidence, then the fury after the betrayal.
And then real bravery under fire.
Yeah, it shows that dual nature of the revolutionary crowd, doesn't it?
It really does. The papers praise their glorious actions for liberty. They highlight everyone shipping in women, children.
But then
you have the horrifying fate of Delaunay. The same crowd, capable of incredible violence driven by anger, maybe a sense of payback, this newfound power.
It's that complex mix, idealism and brutality side by side. It's rarely simple, is it?
Almost never in these situations.
So if we try to boil it down, what's the main takeaway from this deep dive?
Well, I think it's clear the storming wasn't primarily about the 7 guys inside. It was seismic because of what the Bastille symbolized. It was a physical attack on an idea, the absolute power of the king.
Even though the reality inside was almost mundane by that point.
Exactly. Its fall became this massive symbolic win against tyranny, a real turning point. The idea of the Bastille was far more powerful than the prison itself on July 14th.
So, to sum up, July 14th, 1789. A crucial day. You had all this popular anger focused on this potent symbol of royal oppression, the Bastille. It explodes into violence. And even though the prison itself held few people, and none for political reasons that day, the act of storming it became this incredibly powerful, lasting symbol of revolution. A symbol of people taking down what they saw as oppression.
It really highlights how symbols can drive history, sometimes even more than the practical reality on the ground. The Bastille in the French imagination was just immense.
And the crowd's actions, brave and brutal, show just how complicated and volatile these moments of revolution are.
Absolutely.
It does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the symbols that have power today. Are there things we see as these huge monolithic entities that might actually have, well, surprisingly mundane realities behind the curtain?
That's a really interesting thought to leave people with. What symbols shape our world and what's the reality behind them? Definitely something to chew on.